if you want to understand the consciousness, he says, look at the relationship of the squares to the circles. Again, this is male energy in relationship to female energy. Look at the squares and relationships, and look how squares that are around the circles interact with the circles. And look to see if there are any places where the phi ratio takes place, where the golden mean ratio happens, that, where the circle and the square are the same perimeter, or if it's very close. You're not going to get a perfection starting out, but where it hits really, really closely. Well, you look at the first one, the first square around the first circle, and it doesn't even touch another circle. It doesn't interact with another circle. The square around the second one still doesn't touch. The square around the third one starts to penetrate the fourth one, but that's obviously not there. But the square that goes around the fourth circle relative to the fifth circle happens to be an almost perfect phi ratio. That is the place that self-aware consciousness happens for the first time. That's 42 plus 2 chromosomes. That's the aberrational. It doesn't go into phi ratio again until you get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this purple one. Seventh circle relative to, not one above like the fourth and the fifth, but the seventh circle relative to the ninth one. So you see how it passes through the green one here? We're just visually looking at this right now. That is the seventh relative to the ninth also forms a near perfect phi ratio. So there are two places in there where you have a near perfect one. However, according to Thoth, life has never figured out how to go from the fourth level to the seventh level without passing through this disharmonic level between them. So there's another stage in there. I realize I'm not pinning anything down here yet. I will. So this fourth level here, relative to the fifth, there's two stages in between this fourth circle and the fifth circle and the seventh circle. Getting mixed up myself here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth square and the seventh square, there are two other possible squares that are in between. As it turns out, and I never understood why for a long time, but it was the fifth circle relative to the sixth one that life has chosen. He didn't tell me for a long time. He said, you figure it out. Well, it took me like 2 years or something to figure it out. And I finally did figure out. And what it is that if you take this square and of the seventh and turn it into a diamond, it will so happen that this one will come up and touch perfectly. If you drew these perfectly, this is just touching that circle. You see how this square comes down? And if you do, it comes up and it will touch perfectly, and that particular consciousness shows or can determine where the boundaries of the next one are. And so, in terms of human terms, we have something within us that is the key to Christ consciousness. We are not Christ consciousness, but we contain something within us that can reach it. So it's just geometrically showing what it is. If you want to see what I'm talking about in terms of the ratios, this green one is the first level, the red one is the second level, and the blue one is the third level of consciousness. And you can actually measure which one is bigger than the other without any sticks or anything. That's usual. You should be able to. Using your radii as your measuring stick and counting that measuring stick as 1. Gets more. You could count it as anything, but if you count it as 1.6, it becomes complicated. So you count it as 1. So your radii is your measuring stick. Then you could tell how many radii are across one edge of the square because it is the same as the diameter of this fourth circle. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 radii across that fourth circle. Same number of radii across that edge. And so there's, since there's 4 edges, there's going to be 4 times 8, or 32 radii perfectly around that green square. And the 5th circle out here, if you want to know how many radii are around that, you just count across, and you'll see that there are 10 radii across the 5th circle, and you just go 10 times pi. And 10 times pi is 31.40. So there's 31.40 radii around that circle. So they're very close. One is 31.4 and the other one is 32. They're very, very close in that. And then they go way out until you get to the 7th one. And the 7th one has 14 radii across it, and 4 times 14 is 56. There's 56 radii around the blue square. And if you come out to the final circle, there's 18 radii across it, and 18 times pi is 56.52. So the first one has the circle a little bit smaller. The second one has the circle a little bit bigger. And if you keep running these circles out for a long ways, you'll see this little bigger, little smaller, little bigger, little smaller, little bigger, and how over time we keep getting closer and closer to this perfection of this perfect square and perfect circle as consciousness progresses. The one that we are in is this red one, which is the stepping stone between the two, and we're not even close. But it'll show that if you measure, I think we're about 3 radii off or something. Our consciousness we're not even close to being harmonic. But a necessary place to go. What is it about this? Why does this happen at the 4th circle relative to the 5th? There is an actual reason why consciousness becomes self-aware at that stage. There's a hidden pattern behind this. And the hidden pattern is very familiar. It's the fruit of life. If you take the fruit of life and you count this as your radii as 1, you make a circle which is there, and you come out one more and put a circle which will come around there, and then one more, and in other words, you make your concentric circles out from that, starting with the radii of this. Here's what happens. This becomes the 1, 2, 3, the 4th circle. There's your square. And the 5th circle is the one that exactly contains. Look how the fruit of life fits into that pattern like a key. Perfectly. Absolutely flawlessly. And that is the reason that self-aware happens at that point. It's the reason behind it. It's the secret. This is in all your sacred geometry. When you get to something and you want to know why, look further. Look further. See what the sacred forms are that are hidden behind that, and then you'll begin to understand why. And so this is the first time right here. Okay, I get to talk about Lucy Lubitz. She's a great woman. Though she's dead now, I'm really sorry. I really wanted to meet her, but she died a few years ago. She lived in Abydos, Egypt. But when I was studying all this, I started studying the Egyptian thoughts on it. I'm getting this from Thoth. He tells me things, and whenever he tells me things, I start checking him out always. He told me to. He says, don't believe me. Go find out for yourself. It's the same thing I tell you. And so I started checking. He said that there were these 5 levels, and that we were within 3. And so I started checking this in Egyptian beliefs and thoughts, and found out that they did believe that there were 5 levels, and that we were functioning through 3. And Lucy Lubitz happened to be one of the people who was Swallow Lubitz's daughter, one of the people who had really studied this in depth, this whole concept of these 3 different levels of consciousness that we were involved in. And she took everything she knew and put it into this one drawing. It was the summation of everything she knew about this. And so I had to redraw the drawing because it wasn't real clear. I redrew the drawing down here like this and got all the lines clear and straight. And the first thing that appears that you can see is you've got a Star of David with a Star of David in it and a circle in the center. Well, that's the minimum amount of information to give the fruit of life. So, I mean, immediately you see that. And here you see this ladder running up the middle, which goes from 0 to 19, and then it goes to 20 and 21 up here. And she talks about how there are 3 different sizes of skulls associated with 3 different levels. And this is talking about these 3 different skull sizes. She says the first one is at 18. And according to the Egyptian belief, we grew this entire top of our head when writing was introduced to deal with the complexity of writing. That this was added on later. And then later, when we go to the next level, we will grow a much bigger skull, like our Akhenaten type skull, to deal with the complexity of fourth dimensional consciousness. This is that, remember I said there was a big pile of rocks? It was at Karnak? That was a big pile of rocks, and she just picked up one of them, maybe 2 or 3 of them, measured them, looked at it, and said, aha. And said, made a drawing, says, that's what it looks like. And told them how to, and they put all the rocks together and then formed it. Then she went over to another big pile of rocks. I don't have the other one here. Picked up some of those and measured those and said, okay, this is what it'll look like. And they put it all together and it formed this other temple, which was different from this one. And she could tell, just on the geometry. I mean, this is how well she understood what sacred geometry was all about. Because these temples were all holographic in their nature, so she knew that once she knew what a little piece was, she could figure out what everything was going to be like. And she was an amazing, amazing person. And this is the Luxor temple, an aerial view, a drawing of it from the Luxor. And this temple is based on 19. Remember that ladder went up, and at 19 it showed our skull size? And this was the temple of man, which is us. And you see the skeleton behind here. You enter in, this is a big, huge, enormous, incredible 3 or 4 block long temple. It's big. And inside of here are all the proportions of the human body and all these other kinds of things. Carefully worked out. It's very, very carefully. And it's broken up into these 19 divisions. Well, I've never been able to correlate the straight Egyptian 18, 19, and 21 divisions that they have given 3 levels of consciousness with, and the one that Thoth has given me, which is this one of these other views. I can't, at this point, cannot find the bridge between the two. There's going to be some sacred geometry form hidden behind there that's there, but I can't find it, that would bridge those 2 things. So far I can't do that. So I have to skip between one or other, whether I'm talking about Egyptian system or the one that Thoth has given me. And this is the one where I told that story, which I'm not going to tell this time, about going into the Temple of Dreams. I remember, for those of you that saw the thing. I know I haven't told any stories yet, because I'm just barely being able to get the information through here. I will tell a couple here, but it's I don't know. I'm gonna have to go to 6 days. Yeah.
Why not?
That's why he did it in 6 days. You need it. I can barely rest doing it in 5. I'll tell you, it's really hard. It's really hard. For a long time I was doing it in 4, and I mean, we were just like, I had to drop out tons of stuff and really move out to be able to make it. Well, anyway, this temple has a long causeway that goes for several miles over to, this is Luxor, and it goes over to Karnak. There's this wide thing about as wide as this room, lined with sphinxes, with sphinx heads on it, And then the Sphinx heads turn into ram's heads as it gets into the Temple of Dreams. And so the Temple of Man are connected to the Temple of Dreams. They have you come in here for, this is where your initiation begins. This is where Thoth had me begin. I had to start in that temple. He said if I started in any other temple, forget it and go home. And I had to start here for the first initiation here, and then go to the Temple of Dreams, and then from there were certain places I had to go to all of it. So when we talk about that. And the Temple of Dreams is very powerful if you ever have that initiation, because your dreams become real, and it becomes a school. And for a long time I was taught through my dreams. I mean, there was no rest, right? I'd go in, I'd lay down, and here I'd be with all these people teaching me all this stuff, and it was kind of fun, but it was a lot of work. Kind of glad it's over with, actually. So coming back to this, there's this fruit of life pattern that's around here. This skull that's up here, that the Egyptians claim that we grew in response to this, to writing. There is physiological evidence to suggest strongly that what they are saying is true. And that is the fact that you can take the entire top half of your head and cut it off and throw it away, and it doesn't kill you. It's called a lobotomy. And this is the electromagnetic, this is the scheme of the basic scheme of the human brain into electronics. And it says right down here that removal of the upper cortical areas, where conscious thinking takes place, has little effect on the circuit of information required for the equally complex computations needed for walking and maintaining equilibrium. I mean, obviously, if you cut off the top half of your head, you're not going to be the same. And you can't run computers and things like that. But you don't die, I mean, which is really remarkable, that it doesn't kill you, that you can take something so seemingly important and get rid of it. And, but according to them, that's because it was an addition to. It was not part of the essential mechanism. Now, coming back to this again, first of all, there was this fruit of life pattern and this stair-step pattern. Here was the fruit of life pattern that she has around there. And so I redrew that pattern as a separate drawing. I was going to begin to analyze what she was doing. So I drew one of the patterns on her. And then I took the ladder pattern and I drew it. And the ladder pattern, which around there, is another way of drawing concentric circles. So I drew this pattern. And then I thought that I would just be able to take these two patterns and superimpose them. That was just sort of the way I was going to, it was just my way of proceeding to try to figure out all the ways that she was looking at this. And when I tried to join the two together, they didn't fit. And I went back and I thought, oh, I must have made a mistake. And I looked at things together and put them back together, and they wouldn't fit. They just wouldn't go together. And you see, because the central pattern in her drawing shows clearly that the central circle is divided into 5 equal places, not counting this line down the middle. There's a very clear 5 division and 7 above and 7 below. So if I took the fruit of life pattern, shows that there's a central, from the central pattern, there's 2 circles above it, reaching up to here. And if this is 5, then this would have to be 5, and this would have to be 5. But when you integrate those 2 patterns together, you'll find that there's a half a circle above and a half a circle below, and it won't work. It just won't work. And I couldn't believe it, and I went back to her original drawing, and then I assumed the ladder was equal, because that's what you do. You assume there's an equal ladder, right? But when I carefully analyzed or measured very, very carefully, I found that the 5 spaces in the middle were one size, and the 7 above and the 7 below, she had contracted them slightly to take up that half space so that the whole thing would fit together. And that was her, like Leonardo had the writing that you had to put a mirror onto, which would show the reflection, that there was that the female was a mirror image. This was her way of saying that our consciousness isn't harmonic. It isn't her. She knew that it wouldn't fit together, and she had to distort the image in order to make it fit. And you were supposed to find that in order to know that. And there is, and I will not say his name, there is an entire book that's been written on this very ladder that had assumed that it was equal, and everything that had been written in that book has to be wrong, because they didn't pick that up. That one little thing was not picked up. So anyway, coming back to these three levels of consciousness, what I would like to do now is to look at each one of these levels geometrically. Bring out the geometrical lens or image that each one of these consciousness levels interprets their reality through, and first identify them. Get each one of them identified so we can look at them, and then we will talk about them a little bit deeper. In order to do that, I'm going to give them names, and the name will, and you'll understand why I'm giving them these names as it progresses. The first one, the green one, I'm going to give it an 8 by 10, meaning that the number of radii across the green square is 8, and the number of radii across the circle that forms the phi ratio is 10. So I'm going to call that an 8 by 10. Does everybody get that?
Yeah.
Anybody not get it? Okay. The next one will be a 10 by 12, because there's 10 radii across the square and 12 radii across the circle that sort of forms the phi ratio. The blue one is 14 by 18, which is Christ consciousness. Now, the first one, the 8 by 10, there's different ways that you can construct this to get a perfect 8 by 10. And I was just beginning to conceive of a way to do it when Thoth just said, look, let me just tell you a way. He says, it took us a long time to figure this one out. And he showed me this. This is not mine, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You take an X down a circle, and you run Vesica Pisces down this circle in this particular pattern. It makes an 8 by 10 perfectly, and you can measure it without it. All you do is where the Vesica Pisces, you run lines down the center where the Vesica Pisces is, and where they touch, which will make parallel lines. And then you make parallel lines running this way, like this, running down. When you do, you come up with this. It will be, you can see the grid behind it, and it'll be exactly an 8 by 10. Each one of these things comes down and forms exactly 8 across here, but you know that it's a 10 because you see this Vesica Pisces that extends out here? Half of it is in here and forms one of the squares, and the other half comes out and tells you where the circle is. So you know you've got a perfect 8 by 10, okay, without any measuring sticks or anything. And then you look inside of here. Remember, though I did not get into this in great detail, and there is a book called Sacred Geometry by Robert Lawler, which is a really good book in sacred geometry, and I've got the thing and where you can get this from. And in there he will talk about it, though there are a lot of other sources that will talk about it, that the philosophy of Egypt was reduced to the square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 5, and the 3, 4, 5 triangle. And all of those sacred angles and the 3, 4, 5 triangle are here at one moment, which anytime you see all that stuff appear at one time, you know you've got something real powerful going on. For example, the diagonal that runs across here is the square root of 2. And what I mean by the square root of 2 is just this. Just so you understand real quickly. If you count this as 1, and count this as A, just say that's A, then we know that A squared equals 1 squared plus 1 squared, right? Or A squared equal, that should be an equal, equals 1 plus 1, which equals 2, or A equals the square root of 2. So this is a square root of 2, diagonal. And the square root of 5 is simply this shape. 2 squares together, which is the Fibonacci 1, or the shape of the king's chamber. If this is 1 and this is 1 and this is 1, and you're looking for that diagonal, then this is A, then A equals 1, and this equals 2. 1 plus. So A squared equals, 1 squared is 1, and 2 squared is 4, which equals 5. So A equals the square root of 5. That's the other sacred angle. Square root of 2, square root of 5. And the square root of 3 is the golden mean across that one. A little more complex. So they're all here at once. Here's the line coming down there, which is the square root of 2. If you come from this point to this point, if you count 4 of these squares as 1, then there's your 1, and you got 8 going this way, so that's 1 and that's 2, so that's the square root of 5. And then in the middle, around one of the Vesica Pisces, you have a rectangle which produces a square root of 3. It's a little bit more hard to explain. And then you have a 3, 4, 5 triangle inscribed in here. If you count 2 of these squares as your measuring stick of 1, then this will be 1, 2. See this triangle that's inscribed perfectly in here? Well, this edge will be 1, 2, 3, and this edge will be 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, and by Pythagorean rule, that has to be 5. So you have a 3, 4, 5 triangle inscribed perfectly. All the sacred things are here at one place at one time. And all these kinds of synchronicities, if you notice, the circle will precisely hit these precise edges. All this perfect moving lines that go in there. One more thing which is kind of funny here. You see this circle and this eye in here. You see it's the CBS eye. Actually, when we go to the next one, you'll see it even clearer over here. This is the same one again. There's the symbol for CBS, which whoever did that had something going for them when they understood that. And that literally is an eye. It's a lens. It's a lens that the aboriginal interprets the reality through. And so here you start seeing all the synchronicities you just saw, and you see how the white light spiral reflects inside of there. The black light spiral reflects perfectly, which we saw later. It'll just precisely tip the edge over there, and all these kinds of things. These amazing motions of lines that happen from this first level of consciousness. Okay, now we got that one. That one of 64 squares, first level has 64 squares in it, is related to another one that we saw earlier of 64 squares, and is related to another drawing we saw of Leonardo's, which is where that other one came from. And so at this point, you can superimpose, though this page was not flat when the copier came on, you can start superimposing all kinds of patterns over Leonardo's drawing all at one time. You've got you've got a lot of stuff going on here now, but all those 64 squares and the first level of consciousness and all these other things are all on there. Notice also that here is the 8-cell division. And you can clearly see now how the proportions of the adult human being are contained in the original 8 cells before it ever even got to the adult. That it's all in there. and you start seeing the black and white spiral motions and a lot of other things, and you could superimpose so many things over there that it begins to, you can't even begin to see it after a while. And it's all there. These are all just some of the energy fields around the body, and they're so complex, there's so many of them, it just becomes like a light coming off of us after a while. But what this means is that we've always thought that this drawing of Leonardo's is us, right? It's not us. It's the first level. It's where we came from. It's our past. It's our past. It's not the first level. It's not the second level that we're on now. When I saw this and realized this here, my first inclination was, well, did Leonardo understand what I'm being taught through Thoth? Was you know, he was a Mason and all this stuff. I mean, did he, is that how he got this? These were the thoughts that were going through my mind. And so I started looking through all of Leonardo's works. I went very deeply through everything that I could find on Leonardo. And to looking for another, see, if this was an 8 by 10, what I was looking for was a 10 by 12 or a 14 by 18 to see if Leonardo had another one of the pieces. Because this could just be a coincidence. This could be just a coincidence. But if I did find a 10 by 12 or a 14 by 18, then that would be kind of start going outside of the coincidence, because you can make any kind of grid in there to make a human canon in all kinds of ratios. And so I looked and looked and looked, and I never